Hello and welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to be doing a react video to an AAR from the official YouTube channel for Europa Universalis titled Journey to 1600, The Rise of Russia, Europa Universalis 5 Community AAR. Now, for this, we just kind of wanted to give some brief thoughts. We haven't watched any of this video, so we don't know what's coming up, and we're going to be mainly reacting to it. But we wanted to give some brief thoughts on Russia, which is Russia has one of the hardest starts, or one of the really rough starts, out of any country that's kind of considered a big country or a country with a lot of flavor. They in particular really struggle with a lot to do with their geography, but they have an interesting kind of top-end experience in that they have a lot of proximity cost reduction, some of which is not visible in their content bonuses at game start when you are picking which country to play, and you can look through those bonuses. Some of them just aren't up there, and so it's difficult to appreciate, but you can get to the point where you have zero proximity cost. But even despite that, it still could be the case that a country like France is better, because Russia has a lot of things struggling with it in regards to its start, and we expect to see your ability to reduce proximity cost to 0 or 0.001 just completely eliminated, which incidentally, if you could reduce it to 0.001, eventually what's going to happen is that you are going to bump into stuff like woodlands and forests, and you're still going to have to pay proximity cost. And for those of you who don't know how proximity cost is important, everything that your country can do scales with how much control you can exert over an area, and proximity cost allows you to fully exert control over an area in the same way you would your capital. So, for starters, the Arctic modifier is really, really rough, and you have like half of your nation in it, and then you have relatively flat land, so this is actually really good when combined with proximity cost reduction, because the thing that is going to gum you up and eventually slow you down when you have so much is going to be stuff like this wetlands, which gives you additional proximity cost. So if you have minus 100%, minus 110%, and then you bump into a wetlands that's 135%, then that's what slows you down. Also, what's going to slow you down is forests and woodlands. You will have this big open area that is all grassland and flatland, though, as you get closer to the steppes. But the thing that is really kind of the struggle for Russia is, first of all, you have basically no pops at game start, and this is really important. Pops are really important, but also you have pretty bad resources, just generally speaking. And so this is how, even despite having this absolutely enormous bonus, it's not clear to me that Russia would be stronger necessarily as a European nation, even though they have a lot of top end. Like once you start getting to the 1600-ish, 1700, this type of thing, and you can fully stack all your modifiers, they will be very, very interesting. But you still have to integrate land to make use of it and this type of stuff if it's far away, and even though you can spread proximity to it pretty easily. But that's kind of a brief enough intro. Let's get into this AAR.
The votes are in, straight from YouTube community and Twitter, and you chose Muscovy. In this exclusive Europa Universalis 5 gameplay after action report, we'll chart the rise of Muscovy as we forge alliances, wage wars, deal with internal struggles, and strengthen.
They do have one of the most annoying disasters, which gives you minus 20, I think it's minus 25 estate satisfaction, or minus 50%, just an enormous minus that makes it completely untenable. So you just max taxes and then consolidate and be okay with the fact that you're going to have zero satisfaction on your estates and just deal with the rolling in revs.
Our economy on the road to forming the Tsardom of Russia. Our ultimate goal? Reaching a staggering 10 million pops across the empire. So buckle up, grab your Yushanka, and join us on this.
I wonder how they got 10 million pops. That seems like a lot given their starting conditions, unless they were doing something particularly creative.
Epic journey through the ages. Muscovy is a special tag in EU5.
So just to be clear here, we are starting with 300k pops, and the places that aren't colonized virtually have 0 pops.
Being one of the nations with the most flavor on release and starting in a much harder position than they do in EU4.
Yeah.
Having many events and unique advances unique to Muscovy, with 2 of those unique advances already unlocked, giving us subject income and diplomatic capacity.
Diplo
we will
cap
use
is
these
kind of
unique
nice.
advances to our advantage, and much of our expansion will be done through subjects rather than direct control in the early game, as we're very limited in how much land we can directly integrate.
Generally speaking, this is the way to expand as everyone.
Matter of fact, Muscovy starts with 2 provinces integrating at the start of the game. Muscovy starts in 3 international organizations. The first international organization is the Tatar Yoke. Many of the Eastern Slavic nations must pay tribute to the Golden Horde. For now, it's fine, as doing these payments also benefit us by giving us more prestige and diplomats. And we're going to need these diplomats to do our starting plays. When we feel strong enough, we can break free from the Tatar yoke and end these payments to the Golden Horde.
Often, like, waiting for them to rev or something like this feels like a good time, or waiting until after you have professional armies to really be able to punch through, as relying just solely on levies to be able to fight them is a little bit difficult. With the newer version, with levies being a lot stronger, this presents more difficulties because your ability to leverage professionals to, like, kind of break parity with the Golden Horde is significantly less. You can probably also recruit up mercenaries if you can spin up the money, but it's difficult to spin up the money, you know, with these, like, really, really lackluster overall resources.
Triggering a war directly with them. The second international organization is the Patriarchate of Constantinople. As part of the Orthodox Church, we are under the religious guidance of the Eastern Roman Empire, providing different bonuses through religious laws. Third international organization is the Novgorodian Muscovite Union. These nations are all under the same prince, Prince Ivan Rurikovic, who rules from Novgorod. However, when Prince Ivan dies, the Republic of Novgorod will elect a new ruler, likely leaving this union. As part of my first diplomatic play, we improved relations with Novgorod and curried favors with them. We'll use those later on. We also did the same with Smolensk and Ryazan. Our starting economy is very weak as Muscovy. We looked for some favorable trades to help with this, but really the best way for us to improve our
There's really not a lot of trade range or good resources within range.
Economy is by expanding. We granted our boyars and commoners estates privileges to increase quality and quantity of our levies, the units we used to fight in the early game before getting full professional armies. Our first Duma was called, and I used it to get claims on our neighbor Dimitrov.
Just pretty solid, expanding around the capital. I do think integrating directly, stuff that is specifically just within 1 to 2 lengths of the capital is reasonable, but given he's already starting out with 2 places that need integrating, the subjugation here makes sense.
Easily defeating them and their allies, subjugating all of them through war.
Sure.
We then used those favors we've been collecting to invite settlers to Moskva from our neighbor.
So this is one way to kind of spin things up. And to be fair, invite settlers, if I recall correctly, doesn't seem to scale all that well in terms of it doesn't scale with the size of your nation or the size of the nation you're asking as much. It's just kind of a flat amount. But to be fair, if you are a really low pop country, this is actually a decent enough one. And maybe this is how you kind of spin it up to 10 million. That still seems like a lot to have by the end of... Well, I guess in 1600, maybe it's kind of like an okay amount, but like you could definitely have more than... We're currently in a Castile run where I think it's... we're like just past 1500 and we have like 12 million pops, just like as a frame of reference, although we might have expanded a little bit more than
countries.
He ends up doing as Muscovy.
This is a diplomatic way to bring in new pops to provinces of our choice. I use this diplomatic action.
I was trying to see the exact numbers
to increase our population.
I know it doesn't
in January
scale.
1342, we entered the Age of Renaissance, giving us.
To be fair, I might just be generally speaking underutilizing that as an action because pops are just so incredibly important. But you are going to be using diplomatic capacity, generally speaking, if you want to generate a lot of favors. But if you only need 5 to call in. You only need 5 to be able to get people to come to your nation, which is a significant thing because your favors for people who are not your allies are gated by your level of trust with that nation. And so, generally speaking, the bigger favor asks, the things that are like 25 favors, which is like ask for money, you need to be allies in order to get these. But for the smaller ones, which includes ask for population or ask for resettlement, this isn't required. So maybe this is a bit of a situation where this is kind of an aggressive action you can use to try and run up the pop numbers, especially as someone who starts with low population or relatively low population like Muscovy.
The option to choose between different advantages.
I do think that the best thing in the military focus is the tolerance ideas.
Choices, depending on our focus. Well, the military focus gives levy size and levy combat ability, which would...
The military focus is like basically all for levies, which doesn't really scale that well in the late game.
Help us in our wars. We plan to be a big and wide empire, so I saw more value in the proximity cost advance and...
The proximity cost specifically also just gets... This is something I have been I've been commenting on very frequently for quite some time now, which is that I would prefer it be an efficiency modifier rather than a cost reduction modifier. But if you have access to more cost reduction modifiers, the more of them you have, the more valuable they are, and Russia specifically gets a lot of them. So for Russia specifically, admin ideas are very attractive.
And the 5% nationwide literacy.
Litz
In March
also great.
1342, Novgorod asked to be our ally. We chose to accept to give us a strong defensive ally while expanding into our neighbors. In our current economic situation, we needed cheap ways to increase our income and tax base. So I decided to expand some of my RGOs.
Specifically, you notice the income right here? The income is, generally speaking, pretty variable between these. There's one that's 0.12, 0.5, 1.0. This is because it's scaling with both market access, which great for Russia. Muscovy starts out with their own market, and also control. And so the variance is enormous, and this should be generally a kind of a thing to highlight in terms of these things are really, really important economically, and you definitely want to play around them. And even if you have something like grain, the expansion of this can be more profitable than the expansion of something that is much better RGO like silk if you have much better market access and control in that area.
However, we did not really have the best resources in our territory.
Yeah.
I chose to expand.
The best resources that you have is going to be the wool. It's got a base price of 2.5, and it builds into clothing, which is kind of something that you could be building early on. I don't know if your pops, specifically different cultures demand different things, and I don't know if your pops that are Russian specifically demand less fine cloth and less cloth, and instead like demand something like furs or something like this, or have this type of replacement, in which case this depreciates the value of the wool, but also gives you some buy orders for fur. Fur has like a base price of 2. You have a huge glut of it, so the price is going to collapse, and you won't be able to export it until later because you don't have enough trade range.
Since at least our people won't starve, and we can keep selling grain to other markets. Although the first institution professional army spawned, it spawned all the way in Paris, meaning
Institutions are really, really rough for Russia.
it'll be a while before it comes to us. For now, we can go into other advances such as the Land of Rus, a unique advance to our culture group. With our second Duma now in session, it was time to use it to get a CB on Suzdal.
Duma, of course, is the name of the parliament mechanic. Most nations, or most major nations, have their own unique name for the parliament.
Had one ally that would join the war. We called our levies, but this war was in the winter, meaning that we would face some attrition. But once again, we quickly defeated.
Notably, winter is not just a month thing, it also has to do with how far north you are, and this is another thing that is going to be a significant annoyance playing as Russia. Also, it can stop your constructions from going as well, which is going to throttle you sometimes in terms of if you get throttled by construction speed, it's going to be worse in areas where you have winters.
Our enemies, taking some land and subjugating the rest.
Okay.
Afterwards, we completed our first mission tree, an efficient cabinet, giving us some bonuses to our neighbors.
Max tax is a very strong modifier. Usually we go for the centralizing mission first, or the one that gives you centralization, and just look to push that up as quickly as possible. But if you have less territory, that's probably not as important as it otherwise would be, and he's kind of sitting on not as much territory.
For our next mission tree, we will choose the infrastructure effort missions
This is the one that I would open with.
to increase our control and push us towards the centralization value.
Yep.
In February 1346, the Black Death started, spawning in the Golden Horde, our close neighbor. It
He probably doesn't have enough money to really do all that much about it.
was not long before it had spread to our nation. We had lost money due to an event, and we're
Some of those events have really nasty scaling, and being in debt is particularly bad because it decreases your crown power. There's a crown power malice, which decreases your tax efficiency, which can kind of make you spiral out of control, but he has relatively high control, so crown power might not be under the 25, in which is where you start getting the malice right now, so might be a little bit more okay to take loans.
in the economic.
Crown power also scales your trade income, and since his resources are terrible, you can't really trade that much anyways, and so it might be more okay as well on that front.
Position to build one hospital. We chose to isolate the country and segregate the sick.
Expel the sick is a little bit better in general if you can afford to build pest houses, but he can't afford to build them, and so segregated the infected make a bit more sense. I think expel the sick and building multiple pest houses might be better than building the hospital, but that's kind of a math thing, and I think it's kind of close, so this does seem like a good way of handling it. Segregate the infected is going to give like 15 to 20% disease resistance, and then the pest house gives like 30%. I think the hospital gives like 30% or something like this. I forget the exact numbers, but the point is that if you have money, expel the sick is generally going to be better than segregate the affected, and segregate the affected is generally going to be better when you're poor, and the disease control actions specifically are going to be the thing that has the biggest effect on your ability to resist the Great Plague.
I also wanted to isolate our capital to increase disease resistance, but it required more burgher loyalty. I gave them some privileges to do this action. But the best we could do given our position was pray that we didn't lose too many pops.
Yeah, good luck with that. You lose 40 to 60% unless you have an extremely good nation for it.
To help recover from this utter devastation.
So a pop growth, that is quite a lot of pop growth. We don't use this cabinet action very often, and we probably should, mainly because the pop growth side of it. Prosperity is also very strong, and it's giving it to you quite quickly. So definitely think that this is reasonable. Generally speaking, you want to have some pretty solid amount of prosperity generation, because prosperity informs your population growth rate by an enormous amount. So you want enough generation to get all your locations up to 100% prosperity, and so having a positive margin is important. But this action in particular is going to allow you to get out of negative prosperity, but as soon as you break even on prosperity, the action automatically drops. You can't use this to max out prosperity.
In June 1349, the Black Death had passed, taking 132k pops in the process.
Yep.
The disease was still on our border.
Pretty good.
So reopened Muscovy,
only losing about
kept
a third.
our nation in isolation for now. But this disaster was not just within our borders. Our neighbors also suffered heavily. So with the next Duma session, we prepared for war, making a CB on Karachev and their allies. This war we saw the effect.
He is notably using almost entirely Parliament for CB. This makes a lot of sense. You're going to, in the early game, I think, also be pressured to use it to change your laws. I don't know what his law situation looks like. I know that we generally like to CB someone and then find a releasable nation on them, which, to be fair, his neighbors might not have releasable nations, and then just take one location from the releasable and then use the releasables like Reconquest or Conquest War that they will eventually get. And this is primarily how we go for CBs. And then we like to co-belligerate in order to be able to get more people in on it. Okay.
Of the Black Death firsthand, with our levies decreasing by a full 1,000 troops. We sieged Karashev's ally Tver and faced our first fort, meaning this war was a bit longer than the others. Nonetheless, we still won, gaining a vassal in Tver and gaining one location and one province. It was also in this war that we started our first diplomatic annexation, the first of many. This war saw our biggest expansion yet, meaning we took a fair bit of antagonism, kicking us out of the Patriarchate of Constantinople. That's fine, because we made an even cooler Patriarchate in Muscova. We built the Kremlin through an event in
Let's see, do we see the building?
1852, taking some debt in the process and accepting our first foreign culture.
It's really, really rough when you play as a nation that gets a ton of events early on that cost it money. Venice is in that kind of group, and we've given feedback on that.
In 1354, a huge smallpox epidemic broke out in our nation, killing another 50k pops. We repopulated our rural location.
This building is absolutely insane, and to the extent that you could actually spin it up quite a good amount, it is on the settlement. You have to have 5%. Less than 5% of the current population capacity in pops to be able to build it. It goes away once you pass 10%. And in particular, this is really nice for getting like your initial salvo of pops. And you have a ton of locations up here, so maybe this is how we kind of spin up the pops. But something that I think is really worth noting is that this isn't very good for pushing really high pop areas, really high pop locations, and the city upgrade is really important economically speaking, because the city upgrade, which requires that you have 50,000 pops, so a settlement's not really going to be able to push you to be able to get a city, is going to allow you to really ramp up production really, really strongly, because the way the math is on production efficiency, having additional max building levels is going to be very valuable, and the city is what gives that. And so if we would prefer to be able to increase pops really high in key locations rather than just get them everywhere. But the settlement's really strong. You also, while you are colonizing, use the settlement building in basically every colony you get, and this allows you to absolutely explode the population in colonies. And so while colonies in general have a pop investment on the front end, on the back end, you end up getting effectively way more pops. They're just in your subjects in terms of total economic output. And so you kind of get reimbursed in that way. But this is a very important building just in the abstract, and very valuable, and definitely one you want to spam where you can. Also, just every country following the Black Death, probably you should check if you can build some settlements, because on most countries, you will have at least a few locations that you can settlement after the Black Death kills like half your population.
With the settlement building, this building gives 1% pop growth in locations under 5% population capacity. In 1357...
It gives 1% pop growth until it goes away. You have to be under 5% in order to build it, but it will get you all the way to 10%.
And we introduced paper usage in our administration and began the next part of our economic plan. We did not have that much money, but what we could do was reduce the cost of building buildings by decreasing the cost of the goods needed.
Generally speaking, I think you kind of want to open with this rather than let it go to 20 years in, but also this actually depends a little bit on your market and how many of these things like masons you have to build to collapse the price, because if your market overall just has a huge demand for it, it's going to require a lot of masonry to kind of get these to come down.
To build those buildings, such as lumber and masonry. In 1359, our antagonism reduced enough to prepare for war, this time on Ryazan. Our levies were called, and we defeated Ryazan in multiple battles. From this war, we made Vayataka a vassal and took 2 provinces from Ryazan.
I wonder if Ryazan was... He could have just vassalized Ryazan. It's kind of an interesting... Because it's less infamy or less aggressive expansion to just vassalize Ryazan than it is to take locations off of them. Maybe he was a little bit afraid of the infamy. You can see that he has enough war score to be able to do it. And so that is a little bit curious to go for the locations instead.
I integrated one of...
Maybe he just like looked at the antagonism and was just like funnily between kind of 2 points, and he just decided on that. But you could have just occupied Ryazan for an extended period of time as well, wait for the antagonism to go down, and then with the decreased antagonism be able to subjugate them. But maybe he also just wanted them for another war later or something like this.
Those provinces and made a fiefdom in the other.
So this is pretty strong play pattern, just releasing the land you take as a subject. It effectively decreases the pressure on your cabinet action because you have to use cabinet actions to integrate. But if you integrate diplomatically by creating a fiefdom and then integrating them, you won't have to use the cabinet actions or the integrate cabinet action. And so that is a pretty good look.
Novgorod had left our union, making us...
He also might want to feed the fiefdom to Ryazan, but okay.
The leader. But it would be a while before I could annex the other members. July 1361, we got an event to build a grand cathedral in our capital.
So this is a cost of 66, which is around 7x his current income level, which reasonable enough, I suppose. A lot of these events, in particular the ones that are artist-driven, are generally not worth paying. But this is a cheaper cathedral. Cathedrals give a little bit of extra, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, max literacy for clergy, but the important thing that they give is migration and attraction. So specifically areas you want a lot of migration, they're good. I think the capital does tend to get a lot of migration and attraction anyways, such that it almost gets overpopulated or tends to get overpopulated. So I think that from a mechanics perspective, not a flavor perspective, it might make sense to just not want to do this, even though it is a discounted cathedral, just because this isn't exactly the place you would want a cathedral in. You do get the estate satisfaction too, though, so that's kind of nice.
Too bad I didn't have enough marble stockpiled in my market to even build the...
This is a little bit of an ouch, because as long as this thing is trying to build, it's going to demand masonry and lumber are the kind of key important ones, but to a second extent, to a later extent, glass. The demand will keep going, even when the building's not under construction. And so with this, this is going to make it harder for him to collapse the price, because there's going to be a constant demand put by the building in progress, but the building can't make any sort of progress, but the buy orders stay open. And in theory, if he never gets marble, this will eat lumber and masonry until the end of time.
Cathedral. We fix this problem with trade.
Perfect.
In October 1361, we got the Prikazi event, which gave us a new government form.
So specifically, a lot of events that Russia gives it like reforms and this type of stuff that when stacked up are really, really insane.
It gives efficiency in our cabinet and centralization progress. Two things.
So centralization yeah, this is great.
Things that will help us out.
Is it really that worth a reform slot though? I think that this is pretty solid early on. The thing is, efficiency of cabinet is a modifier you start to get more and more of, and so it effectively gets diluted out, but progress towards centralization is definitely something you value, mainly because a lot of estate privileges for the peasants give you a trend towards decentralization. You want to give out privileges to the peasants because you really want them to have higher satisfaction. And so, effectively, as a resource, this progress towards centralization, which allows you to eventually put in more peasant estate privileges, and so in this way it is valuable, but you always want to maintain positive progress towards centralization because the centralization value is so good. But it's going to be nice. Also, early game efficiency of cabinet is kind of a strong modifier.
Greatly.
Admin efficiency is kind of dead.
Stability to replace one of our existing government reforms.
Yeah.
But this was not only the time for
the other one he's using is autocracy, which gives strength to the aristocracy, which he probably has a huge trend towards aristocracy anyways, and couldn't even think about going on to plutocracy, especially with the current level of estate privileges. Would probably like to see more peasant privileges, and peasant privileges are down here at the bottom, and burgher privileges most likely. Every time you hand out privileges, it does upset the estates. So, but once they get capped out, like you can see, these guys are capped out and are actually decreasing, or during parliaments, really kind of the time in which we like to give out estate privileges. But as I was saying here, the trend towards autocracy, not that big a deal because he probably already has a huge trend and can't go plutocracy anyways. And on the build he probably played this on, he probably had the nobles that ate more goods than they got in money, and in that particular case, aristocracy, while annoying from the parliament's perspective, does spin up the economy. We can see crown power is also at 15%, so he's getting a massive 10% tax efficiency malus, and so what this autocracy privilege is really helping out with is plus 10% crown power, so this is allowing him to have better taxes and more income from trade, and so this is a pretty good one to have in alongside this. I think he has access to another centralization or another crown power one, and I think that might be better than this one, but we want to show off the unique government reform, so we probably are not as interested. Like, from the perspective of making a video, you want to slot in the unique government reform you just showed, rather than necessarily using the generic one that gives you 10% crown power.
And cathedrals and government reforms, we needed to keep the expansion going, this time declaring on Yaroslav. This war put us against them and their ally Beluzero, two powers much weaker than us, especially with our vassal swarm that we have made.
Yep. Showing a lot of battles here, just generally speaking.
After piecing out Beluzero to become our fiefdom, Novgorod joined the war on the side of Yaroslav, ending our year's alliance. This war was against our strongest opponent so far, and with it, multiple forts to siege. Luckily, we had a general with 99 administrative ability, which...
Yeah, so this is something that is kind of interesting, and I think that hasn't really been discussed all that much, and we have a nice little screenshot of it, and so we can discuss this a little bit, but the different attributes give different stuff to you as it relates to the military. I kind of think that admin might just, generally speaking, be cracked for your generals in general. Logistics distances, not all that important, but siege ability plus 10%, very nice. And possible frontage. I think frontage is probably one of the strongest modifiers because it's multiplicatively effectively with the rest of what you have going on, and it's a, generally speaking, really rare modifier to get. And what this does is it allows you to have a bigger, wider front. And this is, I think, really, really strong because the amount of stats you can bring to bear in a battle is gated by the amount of frontage you have. And to be fair, when you have small armies, frontage is irrelevant. But once you start getting bigger and bigger armies, it starts becoming just this super, super important modifier. And it's one you can't get in a lot of spots. Now, coming down to military ability, we see that or correct section chance, I think, is... Correct section chance, I actually don't know how strong it is as a modifier, but those are the two buttons are the possible frontage siege ability. And coming back to military ability, which intuitively would be the most important one, army move speed, pretty important, but once forts are kind of acting as hinges or levers upon which the activity happens and are blocking zone of control, this type of thing, movement speed becomes a lot less important. The discipline is great. The discipline increases percentage-wise your offense and your defense, which this is a multiplicative modifier. It seems just as good as frontage, except discipline is in general just easier to get. There's a lot more sources of discipline, and so maybe not a lot more sources of discipline, but there tends to be more sources of discipline than frontage, and since they interact multiplicatively with each other, if you already have discipline modifiers, you'd probably prefer frontage modifiers, although discipline will be better if you cannot fully saturate fronts anyways, and so if you have a small army, discipline will just be better. Combat speed is not all that strong a modifier. It increases the speed at which the reserves get onto the fronts, but I think you just want to load the fronts in terms of your armies. But if balance gets changed in some sort of way, such that overloading the fronts before the battle in terms of unit organization is no good, then combat speed would be pretty important indeed. And then diplomatic ability, we have army morale and army initiative. Army initiative is just insanely important early on, but a lot of it you're getting is from kind of the base values on your units. And so putting initiative on a unit that has a base value of 1 or 2 isn't going to really make it that much faster. And then units with 6 or 7 initiative are going to do pretty well getting in there regardless, but this is probably really, really good early on, just generally speaking. Diplo is going to shine in the early game and then kind of fall off. We don't see, I don't feel pressured by the food very often in terms of unit food consumption, but morale is going to be stronger before you have a bunch of modifiers for it. Because units will route more frequently, and initiative is going to be stronger before you have more units than you have frontage, and it's going to be extremely important early on. But Diplo, just generally in terms of how useful it's going to be, is going to fall off quite a lot in terms of value, but in the early game, Diplo is going to be really useful. Excellent general, though. 99, 94, 86, just absolutely fantastic. At this phase of the game, we would probably most like to have Diplo, and then followed by, if he's saturating his, it doesn't look like he has a big enough army to saturate frontage. So followed by that, probably military ability, and then admin. Although the admin, again, as he pointed out, helps with the sieging.
We had a general with 99 administrative ability, which gave us 9.9 siege ability in the army he's assigned to. In the end, victory was ours, taking a province and a location from Novgorod and making Yaroslav our fiefdom.
It's kind of an interesting question where exactly the best capital for Russia is, because I think both Novgorod and Muscovy really make a lot of sense. We'd kind of need to show the river map mode in game to really kind of fully explain all of our reasoning. I also think St. Petersburg up here would make a lot of sense. If I'm not mistaken, that's where St. Petersburg is, right? On the coast. But it's not called St. Petersburg in game. But all of these seem pretty reasonable, but it's going to depend on where you lean and what you can do in terms of proximity propagation. And Russia's so good at pushing it through land that maybe Muscovy is just kind of the natural choice, especially because stuff is not decreasing. Just to kind of come back into this here, where we are looking at the terrain, development's going to be also just a lot higher in Muscovy, but Muscovy's kind of in the center scrum here, and so you won't have to use too much investment to get out here, and then you're in the plains, whereas if you were in St. Peter, or if you were in Novgorod here, right, your ability to push control through all these woodlands or all of these forests would kind of be a little bit rough, unless you're playing Russia with the super overtuned percentages, where you can probably get over 125 and you can just go through the woods for free in the late game, at which point maybe it doesn't matter, maybe you want to be close to the coast. Actually, you probably do want to, well, actually it just doesn't matter. Functionally, it's going to be very, very similar, but not expecting the game to release in that state and expecting this to be a bit of a consideration. And I think it's going to be, are you expanding a lot in Siberia? If so, you want it in Muscovy. I forget exactly where Muscovy is. I think it's this one. Or do you want to expand into the Balkans and Germany, in which case a better capital is going to be in either Novgorod or up here. So maybe a little bit of a consideration here.
A province and a location from Novgorod and making Yaroslav our fiefdom. In 1368, I wanted to build our first library in our nation. However, I lacked books on...
I was about to say, very often the thing that throttles you from building libraries initially is books. You have this huge pop demand which is unmet, and so you have to fully satisfy the pop demand before you can get books to stockpile in your market. And once they are stockpiling in your market, then you can start building on a library. And so he's going to have to build quite a few scriptoriums before he can try and build a library.
In our market, we fix this problem by building scriptoriums, the only building that produces books until the printing press. In 1369, we faced our first rebellion when our boyars rebelled against us, causing a small civil war. We crushed the civil war with ease. In our next Duma session, we got the option to promote urbanization, creating
pop promotion speed, specifically following the Black Plague, is really nice modifier because you had a bunch of vacancies being created by pops dying.
a town in one of our locations.
This is also insanely good. Yes, if you are, generally speaking, poor, the fact that it makes a free town, this doesn't scale very well at all when you're big. It's not very useful if you're big, and the pop promotion speed's a bigger aspect of it. But Russia, or Muscovy, starts out really small and poor, and the free upgrade to a town is going to be a bit of a thing. We can see that he's making 6.4 ducats, right, in terms of income. The upgrade to a town is base price, I believe, 500 before your reductions due to having cheaper input goods. And so this means that that would be the year's worth of investment to get this. And so really a strong one to roll on the smaller nations is promote urbanization.
Would increase our number of urban locations from 2 to 3, massively helping our
2 to 3, so plus 50%. And this is what throttles him from being able to max out some of these industries. Like he might be on scriptorium cap in 2 of his locations, and now he can't build any more scriptoriums until he gets another urban area.
Short-term economic buildup.
Kind of unfortunate is it is in a wool province, because we'd prefer it not be there, and there's only 9k pops there. So you can see that there's 8 wool potential, right? And 9k pops. And it takes 8k to fully employ those. And so that is going to be like, but he's, if you're really in need of urban locations, which it seems he does, maybe you're okay with this. This is also, as soon as you become a town, you're going to brick this. And so this is going to hurt his population growth as well. But again, if you're pressed for towns, then this makes sense. It just would be a little bit frustrating not rolling this on a location with a worse RGO, because wool is your best RGO, and it's going to decrease the levels, or a location with more pop. Although, to be fair, you don't have locations with more pop at this point.
The new scriptoriums we built caused a new deficit of goods in dyes, so we had to make a couple dye-making guilds.
So right now you can also see his control, which is relatively rough. Looking around, it looks like he hasn't been able to expand out roads too much yet. Roads are really expensive. It's probably somewhere between 50 and 200 per segment for him at this point in time. You could build sand to decrease it slightly, but he's not the only one in his market. So if he builds sand, other people will eat his sand, which is one of the problems with trying to collapse prices when you're small and you're not the only member in your market. When you're the only member, it's fine. But you could also see the little roads in the areas that he does have pushed out control. There are like little roads there. We see a road here, road here, road here, road here. Would really like to see more roads, just generally speaking. However good you think roads are, they're just like better than that, because they also, we talked about his crown power a little bit earlier. Crown power is an aggregate of the power of all your locations. And so increasing crown power in one location is just going to increase your general crown power as well. And for every lack of control you have under 100, you are going to get minus that percentage crown power in that location. So this location with 10 control, minus 90% crown power. Now, most of his pops and most of his promoted pops are in Muscovy. And so disproportionately higher power pops are going to be in Muscovy anyways. But any place for him that is urban, which includes this here, you would really benefit your crown power by being able to extend a road to. And it doesn't look like he has a road there. So that would be something we'd probably prioritize and look to build maybe even before these dies, just to increase global crown power, because that's going to increase tax efficiency. Right now, he has that 10% tax efficiency malice. And just to like drive home why tax efficiency is so important, like if you have an income of, let's say 80, or sorry, if you have an income of 100 and you have expenses of 80, just to kind of throw that out there. And then you get minus 10% tax efficiency. Before that minus 10%, your net income was 20. That minus 10% tax efficiency is applying to your income. And so that's just going to be minus 10%. So now you're only making 90. So your margins turn from 20 into 10. Now, that example we did just because the math was really easy on it, but the point is that this acts as a force multiplier for everything that you're doing. And so, yeah, we want to get a library, but like the road connecting to your other location, which has the most nobles, because he is probably progress towards aristocracy here, and the progression towards aristocracy makes it so you have more nobility in urban locations. This is an urban location. The nobles add a ton of power, just overall. Like I think what we saw as a state, they were over 50% estate power, and so the locations where you have all the nobles, you want to have higher control in, because this is going to enable you to have, higher crown power overall, which is going to improve your tax situation, even if it's not like directly improving like taxes. It's not about necessarily, you're getting value in two ways when you increase the control over here, right? You're getting the value from the buildings, now giving more contribution to the tax base, proportionate to the control, and also by increasing tax efficiency.
At this point, I also wanted to increase our control. The best
there we
way
go.
to do that right
Perfect.
now is to build more roads, which we had not that many of. In 1373, we accepted two new foreign cultures, Ryazanian and Novgorodian. In 1378, we built our first manpower-producing building, the Sergeantry, a building that can only be present in the capital.
Only gives
I
5
also now
manpower,
had enough
can't support
books
that much.
to build our first library. I could now pass our first religious law in our patriarchate, and I chose to enact dual nature, giving us monthly stability growth. In 1380, it was time to expand
Stab
once
is good
again,
early.
this time into Smolensk. With the power of our vassal swarm, we defeated them, forcing their ally Karachev to become our fiefdom and taking one province from Smolensk. Back to our union, the other members refused to appoint seniority to me, meaning we could not annex them directly. However, we do have other diplomatic options to vassalize smaller members in the union, which we did to Kostroma. But now with all the fiefdoms and vassals we had, we were running out of diplomatic capacity. Being a part of the Tatar yoke was taking...
So yeah, this is one of the ways you get pressured. This used to be much, much weaker, and they used to just basically cost nothing. Now the costs are a lot more substantive. You can see he is paying 1.36 at the top end. I think that you hit the floor relatively easily, especially as you expand economically, because it is informed by your income relative to your subjects. And so, which incidentally, your subject contribution to your income is counted in. So if you drop below on loyalty and they become disloyal and they stop contributing, then this will increase diplo cost, and so that could kind of death spiral you a little bit. But yeah, this is now pressured for him, and so a little bit was relieved because he's no longer has an alliance, but now he can't really expand with subjects anymore until he annexes these guys. So annex and expand, or until he pays more on diplo cap.
One diplomatic capacity,
which his margins,
so it's now time.
Since he doesn't have 25 crown power, his margins are probably a little tight. He's making 9.96. He might not want to have a max investment on diplo score
to break free. So in 1392, we click the button, starting a war with the Golden Horde. Even though the Golden Horde was in a much weaker state, the Timurids were allied to them, which was scary. Yikes. Considering they had a large standing army. In order to win this war, we had to keep our levies and vassal troops close together, isolating armies of the Golden Horde and Timurids. But not every battle was won, and with each soldier killed, a pop was lost.
Yeah, so you remember that one location that only had 10k pops? When you look at these and you lose 1,000 units in an army, that's like losing 1,000 from that location. And just like looking at his pops, he has 850k, right? So if he's losing 1,000 in battles, or we didn't see, how much did he lose? In terms of troops, close to 1,000 pops. He lost 1% of his population here. And 1% is really fast on pop growth. And so this is substantive. It builds up. It adds up. Often you can have, in really rough wars, you can look at your population line, and your population line is like going up, and then it goes flat during the rough wars. Especially in the early game, before the graph gets kind of stretched out too long, you can kind of see this effect.
But not every battle was won, and with each soldier killed, a pop was lost.
Yep. Looks like he gets the isolation here, though. Pretty comfortable battle win. Looking at the casualties, yeah, so he only loses 80 here, which is A-okay. Wonder what his, what he has for levies, if they're just regular levies. He has a bunch of combat stats on his levies, though, through, like, some of his privileges and other stuff. And he's forked out for the discipline from the nobles' privilege. That also is a good example. He showed earlier a privilege that he gave out to the nobles, which gives them 100% power, but also 5 discipline. That is an example of a source of discipline. Also, you having all of your nobles be your primary culture, I think gives you another 5%. So a lot of countries will be on 5 to 10% discipline, kind of no matter what anyways.
But even when the Timurids pushed our vassals, the winter was our friend, causing massive attrition.
Yep. He's eating the attrition too, though,
and
right?
Eventually, we got the upper hand, piecing out the Golden Horde to release us from the Tatar yoke, taking one province and freeing all Muscovite slaves in their lands.
Woohoo! Yeah, that's also a
With this
rough
peace deal,
one.
we broke the 1 million pop mark. Stronger?
So, 1 million in 1394. Pretty well expanded. And looking at the populations, even if he assimilates a lot of the surrounding areas, like if he completely conquers the Golden Horde, completely takes Poland, takes Novgorod, that's only 2-3 million pops. And you could see 2.5 in Hungary. And then if you could scroll over a little bit more, you would see like 3 to 4 in Castile, maybe around 3 in England, maybe 4 in France. And so this is one of the struggle points, just generally speaking, but you also see he's doing quite a bit better here. So I think the AI doesn't build the settlement building anywhere near enough, and he seems to be building it in a lot of places, but that is a significant drain on the economy as well. I think the base price of the building is 50, he's probably paying somewhere between 20 and 30 for it, and that represents a really large percentage of his income, at least at the start here. So definitely, like, a point of emphasis is that Muscovy as a start feels really rough because you just are so pressured economically and you don't have any good RGOs to kind of break out. And also, I think that your pops don't demand as much fine cloth. I would have to check on this, or maybe even books or this type of thing. And your pop demands kind of do also inform what buildings you could build to be profitable. And so your economic opportunities are pretty rough, at least at the opener.
Than ever before. Back to our economic buildup, we needed more libraries, which meant more scriptorums, which meant more papermaker guilds, and more die makers.
So he's also up to 4 urban locations now, up from 3, and you notice this is somewhat throttling him because he's constructing in every one of these locations, right? And so construction speed, if you don't have any other urban locations you can build in, that's all you can build in. And he's, again, pressured by winter, because in winter, when winter hits these locations, not just the time of year, but winter as a mechanic, when it hits the locations, it's going to pause construction. Right? So he seems to be throttled on construction speed based on the fact that he can't construct in all of his places, or he can't clear the queue on all of his places. And then he's, again, throttled by the winters as well.
Guilds. At this point, we had gotten our centralization value to just under 40.
That's pretty good. He's probably going to talk about the mission tree, allowing him to kind of juice it up to 60 from here.
Helping us with control. For our next war, we created a CB on Perm, an isolated nation to our east.
Perm actually has pretty good resources, if I recall correctly, or is right next to the Urals, which have really good resources. And to the extent that you actually have good resources in any of Siberia or what have you, it is the Ural Mountains. And so it's a shame they don't quite show that far, but on the other side, off here to the right, we do have the Urals, and there's a bunch of iron there and quite a little bit of gold. So that's kind of over here.
Another easy
I'm not sure if
war
you're going
due to our
to see
vassal
it,
swarm,
but
making Perm our subject, increasing the swarm by 1. More importantly, this new Perm vassal means we can start colonizing.
Perfect. Please show the resources.
Starting with the province with gold, a resource we
desperately needed. Let's go.
We created more towns and annexed more subjects.
But also, that is so far from his capital, he's not going to really be able to push control there for some time until he stacks all these modifiers with kind of the late game Russia ideas.
We built more roads and completed some missions. We built granaries and increased our food production to increase our pop growth.
This is an important aspect. I believe large food storage in province, it has either a cap of 0.05 or 1. You can see here it is at 0.3. Cheap food is generally pretty binary. Food's either like maxed out in price or really cheap. So he does have the cheap food. And then here again is the prosperity. Remember we said earlier, getting the prosperity high is going to be important for pop growth. He's also going to really benefit from available free land. If you are under if you're under 5% pop capacity, you also get this massive, like super underpopulated growth bonus. He doesn't have this here because he's over 5%, and this is in Muscovy. But a lot of locations in Russia are going to get that at the start, and so your population does boom quite a bit, at least to the opener. You can see he's at 1.4 million here.
We even popped a unique event that helped us even further with control.
I just want to see this modifier.
Unique event
so here we have monthly control. Oh, this is just monthly control. Oh, but this is pretty good. Expected cost, of course, minus 2.5%. That is nice. This is expected cost of court is a percentage of your total economic base, which is your trade income and your tax, your total tax base, not just what you extract, but just in total. And so what this represents, if you are spending 60% of your income on sliders, let's say, what this represents is like increasing your income from marginal 40% to marginal 42% or something like this. Or if you're spending 30% or 70% on sliders, it's 30% to 32.5. So assuming you're maxing out your legitimacy spend, which he seems to be up here, and so it'll require less resources for him to maintain that. So this is going to be a nice little bump in income, probably. Urban building cost is also nice. You can stack this. This is kind of another stackable modifier, and so anytime you see any sort of unique content on this, you kind of want to keep in mind that stacking is going to be better for you. Increasing marginal returns on discounts. We've kind of we've been mentioning this a lot. We would prefer any discount modifier to be an efficiency modifier, but anyways, efficiency where you get more progress to the thing, and so instead of it's being minus X%, it is changing the cost of the thing by multiplying it by 1 over 1 plus X. And so if you have plus 100% efficiency, it'll be 1 over 1 plus 1. And so this will be multiplying the cost of the thing by 50%, or 1/2. So anyways.
Helped us even further with control, giving monthly control. But we still had one major problem. In May 1414, we ran out of advances and needed the next institution.
Yeah, so you have to really aggressively try and import from people who have the institution in order to get the institution. Or, as Muscovy, the way we did it when we played, we conquered states with the institution. And we kept a low number of states ourselves. And so it's a matter of what percentage of your pops have the institution. So if we just conquer 20% of 20% of our population elsewhere, in terms of places that have the institution, then we can embrace the institution. So, but this is kind of another reason why Muscovy is rough, is that your institution, your ability to pull them, is probably actually just worse than Mali or Ethiopia. I think that, well, it's certainly worse than Ethiopia, but it's probably also worse than Mali. And so just kind of as a frame of reference, if you don't do something really proactive, this is going to happen.
The only way we could increase this institution growth right now was to either ally nations that have the institution embraced, which we could not manage to do, or import goods from market centers where the institutions are present, which we were doing, but even then, it's a slow process.
It's real slow, especially he doesn't have a lot of trade capacity right now. You can look at this. This is only like 10. Again, you don't have a lot of income. He's like pressured in a lot of ways. He's investing in the settlements. And if you invest in the settlements, then you can't invest in trade, right? But even if you could invest in trade, there's still only so many good trades you could do. And also, it's not the case that he's been sitting on decades and decades of people next to him that he could trade with the institutions. The people next to him have probably only recently gotten the institution themselves.
It's going to cause us to waste precious research time.
If he zooms out, you can
cause us
see.
to fall behind in technology. So we conquered more land. But seriously, the wars against Novgorod, Ryazan, and Chernigiv gave us a fair bit of money. Money that we can use to upgrade rural locations around our market center of Moskva into towns. Then build libraries in those towns so when the institution does appear in our market center, it will spread outward faster.
The thing is, by also acquiring more pops, you're going to make it so that you need more locations to have it. Whereas if you were more densely compact and had more subjects not integrated, which I don't necessarily think is an option after the rework of the way subjects work, because it's harder to maintain them while you're small, then that would have been made it easier to embrace the institutions. Like, the fewer locations you have around Muscovy really would be the way to, like, decrease it.
You can also increase this process by building more roads, allowing us to embrace the institution. This is also around the time that we established seniority in our union. With every policy enacted, we got closer to annexing our junior partner, Vladimir, who was quite large at this point. In 1423, we enacted our second policy in our patriarchate, choosing low Christology.
Clergy state at a satisfactory equilibrium, generally something we kind of like. Tolerance of the true faith is pretty good, though. I don't know which one I would pick here. I'd probably take tolerance. But the clergy satisfaction allows you to research faster.
For higher clergy state equilibrium. In 1433, the opportunity arose to strike a now very weak and isolated Golden Horde, allowing us to expand even further. We did not want to own this new land directly, as that will make embracing the institutions even harder. So we released more fiefdoms. It was 1436.
You notice he's come down a bit in his diplo capacity cost here.
So we released
and
more
he doesn't talk about it at all, but like if we take a look at it here, we see member of the defensive league. But remember, 1.4 used to be what he was paying for his most expensive subject. A lot of these have been brought to floor. Being 0.3 is the cheapest they can be, and then you have just a couple up above the floor. That's because its economy relative to these guys, his income has gotten so much bigger, and it's not net income, it's just your income, your raw income. So even if you're spending a whole bunch on your sliders, it's just based off your raw income. So this means he has overall freed up capacity. He could also free, this is kind of what we're talking about, it's relatively easy to floor stuff, and so he can also feed subjects to, or feed land to his subjects rather than making new subjects. This is kind of a mixed bag because it'll decrease the pressure on his diplo capacity, but at the same time, a lot of your subjects will use cabinet actions like develop province. And so if they only have one province, you will tend to get more density of cabinet actions performed on areas owned by your subjects if you have more of them. So a little bit of tension here. You probably want to try and, you definitely want to stay under diplo capacity, but if you have a lot of space to grow, having more subjects is going to be a little bit better.
It was 1436 and we still had no Age of Renaissance institutions.
Womp womp.
But we still continued with our towns and libraries strategy.
I'm not sure how thrilled we are with trying to push the libraries that aggressively rather than just try and generate more income. But let's actually, how much is he making when he kind of makes this point? So now he's making a whole lot more than he was before, up from 10 to 30, which, like, it's still not a lot. It's still going to be, generally speaking, rough as Muscovy, but he's making quite a lot more. I'm curious what percentage of this he's getting from his subjects and war reparations. Also up to just under 2 million, so it is looking like he's in pretty good shape to hit the 10 million mark, considering he has another 150 years or so.
1936 and we still had no Age of Renaissance institutions, but we still continued with our towns and libraries strategy. In January 1437, the Age of Discovery began.
Let's see, what do we think is probably best for him to pick? I don't even know. I think he picked admin ideas before for the cost reduction. There's not a cost reduction here. I think that flat conversion would be maybe reasonable. I don't know what percentage of his locations are Orthodox, but the base conversion rate's 2, and the flat conversion brings it up to 12, and so that would be an admin ideas. I don't think he really needs the diplo ideas stuff very much, so would not be shocked to see either admin or war ideas. I think I generally undervalue military focus, but otherwise I guess I would expect kind of admin.
Once again, choosing administrative focus for the efficiency of cabinet and speed of integration.
There's also, incidentally, 2 building cost reductions in the admin tree in this age, which stack nicely with the building cost reduction he already has, because the more of these you get, the more valuable it becomes.
Advances. Now, finally, in 1440, we got banking and professional armies present in our market center.
Not yet able to embrace. They have to be on 10% of your, or 20% of your pops.
Meaning it will finally spread in the Moskva market. Back at our junior union member, we began the annexation process, which will take about 41 years. Age of Discovery means cheaper colonies.
Right before the annexation finishes, he can also slide the Diplo slider all the way to the bottom to make sure the annexation doesn't go through before he embraces an institution, because you don't want all those extra lands and pops.
So we started a second colony in the east. Winters and summers passed as we waited for the institution.
Womp womp.
Finally, in February 1461, we were able...
This is definitely rough. You can, though, as it's possible as Muscovy to avoid this point that he is experiencing where literally no research is occurring because you don't have anything to research. But this is going to be something, if you're not really proactive about it, you're going to experience this Russia.
Renaissance institution, banking.
Banking is probably the one we would want the most, followed by Renaissance.
Not really the first...
Because, well,
first institution I wanted, but...
I mean, you're able to fight everyone near you, so I don't think you need the military one. I suppose Renaissance is nice for the cabinet action or the extra cabinet member and also the extra government reform, but would just generally like to see banking if he is under 25 crown power and just kind of make a pretty fast rush for... I forget the name of the building, but it gives you plus 33 or 35% crown power in locations. You put those in all of your urban areas, and this should bring you up quite a bit, especially because he doesn't have a lot of urban areas. They'll be very effective per cost basis.
No institution. We queued up to the bureaucracy advance, and...
The bureaucracy advance is going to give him more centralization, or it's going to give him more prosperity, but it seemed like he was doing pretty okay with prosperity. Maybe he's not. He does have that unique law that gives... prosperity, I believe. Unless we're misremembering it, or the unique government reform. So I think he's kind of okay in that regard. Would probably prefer to see a rush for the building, which I can't remember the name of.
Waited for more. In 1461, we embraced professional armies. We still were not done researching up to the bureaucracy advance, but each institution embraced gives 5% research speed and allows us to queue up the armory advance.
So this is probably what he wanted to get. In particular, to be fair, this makes it so fighting wars is less pressure on your pops. Remember where we saw that battle, 1,000 pops or 1,000 guys died in that battle, which represented a really large share of his population at that point in time. This allows you to generate manpower. Right now, you can see his manpower generation, that's +1 up there. So that's not a whole lot of manpower generation at all. And so by doing this, he can make all of his armies more effective in terms of how many pops he's losing per war and this type of thing. Yeah, okay.
Which is the first manpower building we can mass build. Unlocking the bureaucracy advance, we get access...
Okay, so he was after the unique one. So we were saying that, okay, you could get centralization or prosperity, but it doesn't really seem that rushable. Proximity cost, a very strong modifier, but I still don't think you rush this over the crown power building, mainly because this modifier gets stronger and stronger the more of it you have, and he doesn't have all that much yet, and so would like to probably see a slightly different... I mean, I think the other building would have been better.
A law unique to Muscovy, giving proximity costs...
But also, if you're making a video and you're trying to highlight stuff, this totally makes sense.
Which is great since we just got 100 centralization value.
Yep.
Stacking proximity cost reductions will be vital for...
Yeah, so eventually you can get like over -100%.
The vast empire we planned to build. In February 1464, we embraced Renaissance. With all the Age of Renaissance institutions taken and being close to finishing our integrations, it was time to start expanding again into Ryazan and Novgorod. Our levies being...
So he wasn't expanding specifically to make the institutions cheaper.
Bigger than ever, we made quick work of the Novgorodian army. The water in the...
He still doesn't have a lot of regulars by the looks of it, judging by his manpower.
Sea Cape froze over, and that means I can walk over it. But I accidentally left a stack there, who ended up in the bottom of the ocean.
Accidentally. He might have just been showing off a mechanic here.
Pain is truly salvation.
Yeah.
From this war, I fully annexed Ryazan and took 3 provinces from Novgorod, weakening our former ally turned rival. In 1467, I unlocked the armory advance, building as many armories as possible with the money I saved up.
I wonder if he is on the version where these have a huge upkeep cost or not for this recording, because at the time he was recording, it was probably before the second influencer build where they introduced these upkeep costs, and armories are really expensive on the upkeep cost, and so this would make his income basically his marginal income go very near to 0, And so I imagine he's on an earlier version if that's what's going on. But we also see proximity cost through land modifier, which
In 1470,
which I think is for the version he's playing on. I think it's actually bugged and doesn't do anything.
they unlocked another government reform, taking Sudebnik, adding
But in principle, this is quite strong.
another proximity cost reduction. It was also this time we finished our first colonial charter in the East and immediately started another one. In 1471, we unlocked a third cabinet seat, increasing
Another thing to note with all these colonies, they're coming in with really low pops. You can build the settlements in them, and then they also have the uber pop growth speed just because they have low population growth. So they should fill up pretty fast, and that actually might be a pretty big driver of his population growth in addition to him taking some land.
our integration process.
I'm very impressed that
Our
he could get to
economic
10 million
strategies
pops,
began
though.
to pay off, reaching over 130 ducat income and huge increase in tax base.
Yep.
In 1472, we unlocked our third religious law and our patriarchate. With the colonies in the East completing, we now have the issue of exporting the goods from our colonies in the East to our home
So it's interesting.
market.
Is he going to
Since
show the
these are all
market?
rural locations, we built market villages to do this. Building in this region is going to take longer than normal due to the
I wonder, you could also just destroy the market capital to make it inside the same market, which if you're not caring about the tax base, which you kind of can't extract the tax base anyways, maybe this would be a reasonable way of approaching it. Because, so if you have zero control there, the way that it works is market access is really what you get as a benefit for having a market or having an additional market. And this acts as a multiplier. If you have zero market access, the tax base you get from the thing is just zero. If you have 10%, it's 10%. And it's also multiplied, this tax base is also multiplied by control. But if you have zero control out here, you're already getting zero in tax income from this stuff anyways. It might even make sense to destroy the market that they're in, just so that they're in the Muscovy market. And by virtue of having them in the Muscovy market, you wouldn't have to trade them, and you wouldn't generate any tax base out of these resources, but you'd be able to utilize them, and then from the Muscovy market, be able to trade them away for value. Because he's going to produce more gold than he needs, he would be able to export it for value. And so this is maybe a situation that would make some sense, but maybe it doesn't make sense. I don't know.
the severe winters. In 1475, Lithuania had started to expand into Novgorod. We took the opportunity to declare war on Novgorod and take land for our own.
Yep. Just
This
kind
war
of...
gave us access to our first
That is a lot of land, but he's kind of just continuing to expand in Novgorod. Seems fine enough. I think that often if you generate enough antagonism versus one target, you just keep attacking them until they're dead, rather than I think you either want to play small ball, where you're kind of expanding all over the place just a little bit, or just like go for it really, really hard on one target. And also for the purposes of forming Russia, he needs particular land, and so this makes a whole lot of sense from the perspective of you're trying to make a video. You want to mainly invest all your resources into getting Russia land so you can form Russia.
port. In 1478, we got news that Lithuania attempted to install a ruler on our throne, giving us a CB against them.
How dare they?
Even though Lithuania was no longer allied to Poland, they were still a formidable foe. But we had the numbers advantage, so we eventually overwhelmed them.
2.6 million pops currently.
This war was neither free nor easy, costing us the lives of 40,000 pops.
So in terms of proportion, that's a pretty big chunk of his population. You know, if he has, how much is that roughly speaking? It's a lot of death.
We pieced out for two
Never do
provinces,
math when recording
getting
a
us
video.
closer to that Russia formable. Afterwards,
Yep.
we continued our economic build-up,
Which is
upgrading
what his
another
focus
rural
is on.
location.
Here, let's kind of come back here. So in order to upgrade a location to a city, you need 50,000 pops. And this is kind of what we were referring to earlier with the settlements, is we get a bunch of middling kind of population areas. And so the type of locations we need for the really nice economic activity have a kind of stricter requirement here. But also, you can see this urban location here has a big chunk of pops. And the urban locations in general are going to have more migration attraction. I think this is the 5 urban locations we've seen previously. We can see this place is going urban. And so eventually you kind of pull them in. One of your values can help a lot. Individualism can help push more towards urban locations, and there's text and such later which will push more towards urban locations and help to facilitate this. But this is like kind of, I think, should be indicative of the fact that Russia is definitely more of a long-term country. It is the least explosive country that you have, where you are still eventually getting really nice payouts, and I hope we get to see some of these.
Afterwards, we continued our economic buildup, upgrading another rural location to a town and increasing our tax base by building the most.
What's his tax base at right now?
Upgrading another rural location to a town and increasing our tax base.
So, I think our tax base in Spain right now, in the beginning of the 1500s, maybe that's not a good comparison. He's like in the middle of the 1400s, right? Yeah. But yeah, this seems okay. Russia's just kind of rough. It's going to be like a slow spin up. The graph looks really nice though, because it's just like, look, you start with 3.9, so like
building the most
he's 100x almost.
Unlike the Age of Renaissance, the Age of Discovery institutions were spreading quickly in our territory.
The first stage is generally a lot more rough than the second, especially because once you unlock all the first stages, you're going to have a lot of leftover text, and you don't get into kind of this spinning research speed into the abyss. Incidentally, I think that this is a big reason why India might be stronger than some of the other Eastern countries, is because from India, you will avoid that researching nothing or researching bad text hole that you found in Muscovy. As China, Japan, and Korea, I think it'll be kind of hard to avoid that hole, and so it is definitely a factor.
Increase this further by researching universities, a building that will increase institution spread even.
Also, you see, it does have migration attraction. Pop promotion speed is going to be an important one, especially if you're running low stab. But I think he's maintained relatively high stab kind of all throughout. I don't know if how much he's investigated on the slider. Max literacy for burghers as you urbanize will get better and better. But notice this, unlike the library, doesn't give generic max literacy. It's specifically on the burghers. And so the more urbanized you are, the better the universities tend to be. And they're kind of an expensive building.
Even faster. In 1489, we unlocked another religious law in our patriarchate, choosing reject the tenet of person for more innovative value progress. We also did another war on Novgorod, annexing more land.
So just keeping going after Novgorod.
In 1491, we got
it seems like he's definitely has a bit of a sensitivity towards wanting a good-looking map for like the thumbnail and or just kind of progress shot. Not doing any border gore or opportunistic expands, and instead going for that nice Russia shape.
Unique event to encourage Tatar migration around the steppes to migrate to Moskva. This is already our highest pop location.
So Muscovy starts out as a city. If I recall correctly, maybe it doesn't. It's definitely really expensive to upgrade to a city, but this is like reaching overpopulation situation. So, remember when we said earlier the cathedral might not be useful here. If there's more pops than we could possibly employ
around the steppes to migrate to Moskva.
If there's more stuff that we could possibly employ, where is this migration stuff? Oh, this is the other option. Yeah, we might have chosen the other option. Inward is... I don't know if the version he's playing on Inward is cracked. Inward is cracked on one of the other versions. I don't think it's already our highest. So, this is what we were talking about earlier with the cathedral, though, because we have these locations, like where we have... Remember, the wool, I think it was like in this location, there was like 8 possible wool potentials. Now there's probably 10 or 11. And so we build those 10 like wool locations. I think the urban buildings use up 200 burgers or this type of stuff. And so, okay, we have 15k pops left, and then we can build a bunch of... I mean, with 25k, you can kind of employ up quite a bit of stuff. But the idea is 120k is actually probably more pops than we can employ. It is nice that they're in the capital, so they're in a place with maximum control. That way we are getting, like... It's helping stuff like Crown Power slightly. But overall, I think, like, this is, like, oversaturating Moskva in a way that is maybe not ideal, this is part of why we would not have paid for the cathedral kind of earlier on.
It's pop location by far, but
I would really actually like to see a 4th tier of as a result of just how much migration pressure there is towards market capitals and the capital of your nation. I would like to see a 4th tier of building level, or this to be tuned down generally, where like after 500k pops you can upgrade to like a metropolis or something like this, but only in the market center, which is on Moskva.
But the more pops, the better. In 1495, we unlocked another religious law. In 1500, we annexed our junior union member, Vladimir.
Up to 3.8 million, and he has 100 years left. So, looking in pretty good shape to be able to, considering he's got annexations to do, to be able to hit this 10 million. But maybe not. Incidentally, like in our Spain run, we are just a little bit past 1500 right now, and we have I think 12 million pops, and so I would still count this as like a struggle point for Russia. But I'm surprised he was able to get to 10,
gaining a huge amount of land.
This is kind of a little bit higher than I would have expected too. So I think he's doing well here.
Increase in base tax and a much needed boost in income. In 1502, we got the birth of a city event promoting Nizhny Novgorod.
So I recently loved feedback on this event. The birth of the city, like the modifier is the same title for each of these three options, but they each do different stuff. I think that this one is the best, the one that gives the development growth.
Novgorod to a city, marking the third city location in our vast nation.
Well, this is pretty nice because Novgorod doesn't even have enough pops to get to city rank. So it's going to be really nice because you see here the max building level is 6. We can't click up, but we can't click up this fine cloth place in order to upgrade it. And the fine cloth, I forget. The bonus scales differently in different ages, but the economies of scale production bonus, I think it's like let's call it 0.5 because the math is easier. It's 0.5 here, and so he's getting 3% production efficiency from economies of scale of having 6. When you upgrade to a city, you get like another plus 10 max levels, and so then he can go, or I think maybe it's plus 5. But the point is he can increase production efficiency. And yeah, I know what you might be thinking, hey, like, 3%, 6%, this isn't really that big an increase. But this happens at the margin because it just straight increases output. And so if your building has 90 in input good costs and 100 in output good costs, which this margin will tend to shrink as you build more buildings. As you build more buildings, you deplete your profitable opportunities for buildings, and the margins shrink and shrink and shrink. So your first ones are hugely profitable, but then they shrink and shrink and shrink. So let's say hypothetically we're making 90 out of it, or we're making 100 out of building, the inputs are 90. When we increase the production efficiency by 6%, we will make that building, instead of having a margin of 10, have a margin of 16. So that represents a huge increase, and you're doing it on all your industries when you get the city rank. Also, city rank gives plus 5% control. You can see there's 82.5%, so that will also represent an increase in income from all of this stuff as well. So really, really valuing the ability to go up to cities. I can't remember if it's 5 or 10 additional max levels, but you can see here the level is capped. And what the city's going to do is allow it to go up.
Going to the population map mode, we can see the 3 centers of our nation. In 1506, we passed our last religious law in our patriarchate, arguably
because migration only happens within the market center. And you can see here over, actually, so if he deleted this one, then he wouldn't have to import the gold. Because those other areas would get punted into this market probably. Maybe not. Maybe they get punted to a market down in the south or over to the east. But it is a little bit of a thing. I do think the Novgorod market, maybe you could even move up to here. Well, so here's the thing, is there's a river that goes from here to here. And you get a lot more market access spread on the isthmus, but you'd have to specifically colonize up here in the north, or occupy these territories so for that movement to be worth it, and maybe it's just not going to be worth it in that way. You would also be able to get a little bit more access over here, but okay, I don't think he's expanding in that way anytime soon, so it's probably fine in here. And also, this is where he has a city, so from that perspective, that's also probably reasonable.
Nation. In 1506, we passed our last religious law in our patriarchate, arguably the strongest one, taking the double Sabbath.
He's really spending kind of a long time focused on this, but that is powerful. Wow. Wowaweba, 0.02 population growth. I know it sounds like I might be sarcastic, but that is quite, generally speaking, you can't influence population growth that much, and so this represents a pretty big increase when you look at it from the perspective of compounding pop growth and the fact that your event horizon is like hundreds of years and this type of thing.
With giving global population growth. In 1507, we embraced the Pike and Shaw Institution, unlocking new troops, a new manpower.
So this is 30 years before the next age he is embracing this current age's military tree.
Building and another cabinet slot. We also reached the point where Russian was a stronger language than Church Slavonic, so we changed our liturgical.
Interesting here, Arabic and Arabic. Yeah, the Muslim countries cannot change their liturgical language, and neither can Catholic. And this represents a really significant advantage because even though the game opens with Latin and Arabic being really strong, as time goes on, it will be easier. More power will start to shift away from the clergy in terms of informing the language power, and we'll start to move towards like national languages, and so French, German, this type of thing. And as a consequence of that, it is really nice to be able to shift off to this because you get 1 flat research speed and you get an additional 0.2 if you have the maximum powerful liturgical language. And so being able to shift this is really valuable. But also countries that have a full layer of all their language gets used for everything are going to be really important because your markets inform language power, your court power informs language power, your clergy informs language power, there's like one other category, but the thing is all these are informing language power, but for the Latin, the only thing that's informing it is the clergy, right? So as the clergy become less important, your inability to shift off of Latin becomes kind of negative. But with something like Japanese, your market speaks Japanese, your church speaks Japanese, your court speaks Japanese, everything is Japanese. So in my current game right now, Japanese, despite me like playing, is the most powerful language. And then next up is Arabic, because I'm playing Spain and I flipped Sunni. So I think it's at like 90% of the power of Japanese, or 95%. So probably going to be passing them sometime soon.
Language to increase research speed. And just a year later, we unlock the Printing Press Institution.
Great.
Now we don't need religious influence to take new religious laws. We can spend it calling an Orthodox synod. We use this synod to revisit our cabinet proceedings and gain some flat research progress.
Spicy, 10 research. That's a lot for him. I think when we were looking here, 1.62. So that represents, right, 6 months worth of research, half a year worth of research. So that's quite a lot.
And just a year later, we can spend it calling an Orthodox synod. We use this synod to revisit our cabinet proceedings.
I wonder what the rate
and
on
gain
that
some
is.
flat research progress. We casually fully annex Novgorod, and now our integration map mode looks like this.
Yikes.
But now that Novgorod is fully annexed, we have gained a small monopoly on the fur trade, benefiting monetarily from it.
Also, with the banking institution, he's getting plus 500% distance, which I think is definitely a big factor. But look at this. This is a really small margin in terms of this is per trade capacity, right? We're spending 4.3 trade capacity. This is the amount we're getting from it. You can see the most valuable thing is actually fine cloth. I think that the point is to emphasize that furs are a thing that you could do, but he really needs more trade range to like fully realize this, because the plus 500 is nice and all, but you really need to be able to push the trade further to really realize the fact that other markets have like 0 furs, and so being able to export to them is particularly valuable. We see Lubeck, Stockholm, Kiev, but we don't see anything like London, Paris, these types of things. And I think once he gets that trade distance, that's when the fur trade is going to become much better.
In 1519, we unlock the Training Fields building, allowing us to muster manpower from our many rural locations. In 1522, we embrace the New World Institution, giving us all institutions available. In 1522, we destroyed the Golden Horde.
The New World, in particular, has Rights of the Burghers law, which I think is one of the best texts. In terms of the best texts in this age, I think Rights of the Burghers, Early Arbiquis, Early Arbiquis is this age, right? Yeah, Early Arbiquis, which is going to be the Miltech, and then Paved Roads. And there's one other one that's really, really good. Oh, I also think that the workshops for paper and books are really, really good. So in the colonial tree, though, he doesn't have very much to really achieve there, but it is increasing his research speed. The thing is, just Rights of the Burghers giving you plus 10% max tax on the burghers, I think is
once again
the value.
Nearly fully annexing them. We released a couple new fiefdoms, and we finally formed the Tsardom of Russia.
Woohoo! We did it. And he is at 5 million pops, so he's got 62 years to double that?
But we're not done just yet.
For the goal?
We had more roads to build.
Yeah. Really, one of the premier techs of this age, and it's going to make his control and proximity map mode look a lot nicer, especially as he stacks these modifiers. I know he has more events and stuff to churn through, and he's probably going to get spin it up decently high.
Another bubonic plague outbreak to experience. Womp. This time actually killing more than the first time. In 1537, it was the Age of Reformation.
They killed more in terms of raw number nominally, but that was a much smaller percentage of his total pops. And he's already recovered from it. But
you might be thinking I'm going to go for the administrative focus, but actually we chose the military focus for more culture capacity. We started exploring.
I forget what we think is really, really good in that tree.
Further and further east.
Oh, you know what? Colonial ideas are great for him because of this. I forget. Yeah, colonial ideas are actually quite nice for him. And what he's getting here is when you specifically could colonize areas that are within markets you own, it's actually really nice because you push out the migrants and then they just feed back into your country. So you don't actually lose that investment. And so it's really, really nice as Mali. It's really nice as Russia. And when you do this, you're acquiring more locations with the really big pop growth that can build settlements. And so to some extent, this is a really big opportunity to spin it up. But also, these locations under normal conditions are really low control. It's just that Russia has mechanics to get control there. But like so far, it's 1542. He has an income of 55, just like as a frame of reference on it. He's obviously not min-maxing just to like produce as much income as possible because he's focused on trying to make a video of a particular kind, tell the narrative, this type of stuff, not do anything like nonsensical, like grabbing, like it would have been strong for him to grab specifically places that are like Constantinople and the places, locations that would give sound tolls, for example. He's not doing that. But like with our Spain run, we are currently at like plus 1k like income at like 15, 14 or something like this in terms of like our margin. And so like really like you're just like it feels like you're just very far behind on Russia just as a nation, just like in a sort of general sense, because your start is so slow. But eventually you just have this like unlimited proximity effect, which I again assume that's not going to be the case like on release. And so it's really difficult nation to evaluate, because can you bring enough manpower to bear on your opponents relative to what you have going on by virtue of getting this in the 1700s.
In 1542,
or
we declared
15,
a no
late
CV
1500s.
war on Pskov and fully annexed
Womp
them.
womp. No CV.
In 1545, we declared war on Astrakhan and almost fully annexed them.
So he's looking for borders, I
In
think.
1547, a great fire devastated Moskva, killing over 50,000.
If they weren't all there, they wouldn't have died, huh? Shame on that cathedral.
Pops. In 1554, we...
Okay, progress, possible government reforms. So if it's free, it's for me. This is spectacular. But also, we see this proximity cost of minus 2.5%.
Unlocked another government reform, this time taking 2 unique ones.
I'm trying to remember what the number is. Maybe he's playing on a version where this has already been nerfed. If this was the number that it was before, in terms of proximity cost. And if you can't get 100% reduction, then, you know, obviously, then that's not in the thing. But also, peasant estate satisfaction equilibrium, spectacular modifier, because very often, burger estate satisfaction equilibrium, easy to get. So it's easy to max tax the burgers. Peasant estate satisfaction, difficult to get. So it's often hard to max tax the peasants. The burgers and the peasants have the biggest tax-based contribution, and so taxing them is the most critically important. And so the peasant estate satisfaction is a really strong modifier here.
Oprichnina, reducing our nobles' power, and Tsardom, reducing our proximity costs further. At this point, proximity in this vast amount of land is everything.
So, I mean, I hope he shows a tooltip showing, like, all of it, but he might not. He's getting 5% from the bridge, 2.5% from the law he showed before, 2.5% here. So that's 10%. Another 10% from centralization. Let's see, what else is he... I mean, let's see on, if he's going to show us.
We are slowly increasing our grip on...
I think that Russia has more modifiers. Maybe he's playing on a different version now.
Locations. In 1555, we got an event giving us claims on the entire Baltics region. We used these claims to declare war on Lithuania once again. Our armies now only consisting of professional troops, it was time to bring in more firepower with cannons. But I quickly realized that I did not have enough tin in the Moskva market to make cannon regiments.
Tin, copper, lead are really interesting ones because you really don't need a lot of them, but if you don't have any, you just can't do some stuff. So it definitely is a little bit of a vibe, but you can kind of upgrade these places to cities. You really just need to have some, not like a ton. But it'll be interesting to see as things scale. These are goods that feed into the military stuff. So as military scale, will these eventually be squeezed goods, especially in multiplayer contexts? I don't really know the answer, but these are like an interesting subset of goods because they don't represent a large share of your economy ever, but they represent these things where it is very acutely painful if you just don't have them or can't get them.
We quickly fixed that with trade.
Yeah.
Outgunned and outmatched, Lithuania quickly crumbled under our cannon fire.
Womp womp.
So much so, the Teutonic Order declared war on them. But as the great Tsardom of Russia, I cannot allow such behavior. So we declared war on the Teutonic Order while still fighting Lithuania. Making quick work of both, I
you want to make sure
attention east to deal with the Timurids.
Ooh, Timmy's still around? This late?
At first, we underestimated.
But it looks like he's land grabbing as much as possible here towards the end as well, in order to hit that 10 million pop number. Because he's growing really fast here. He's up like 2 million from like 20 years ago.
I swore I'd
up
never
like 33% from like 2 years ago.
Make
20
again.
years ago, sorry. Fought Timmy twice. Poor Timmy.
1564, we pushed back the Timurid horde to the steppes in which they came from.
So we are up to 7.8 million. So a lot of this additional margin is coming from Conquest here. Because I think this is 7.8. So right before annexing them, it's 64, and then right after it's 65. So it's looking like we're getting like 600k pops here. And I guess maybe I didn't fully appreciate the extent of his conquest.
We declared war on Circassia and Georgia.
Yeah, okay.
Comets in our sky.
So he's not.
We won battle after battle.
It's less getting this from pop growth
Sending
and more
back damage and attrition armies
from
while pushing with fresh
conquest.
troops.
See, the thing is he's going to own all this land, and it's all going to be unintegrated, so it's not necessarily going to be the most useful, but it is going to hit the 10 million goal.
But in my hubris, I made a mistake.
Ooh, the mistake is embracing the institution? You have plenty of stab, right? That doesn't seem like a mistake.
I embraced the artillery institution, costing us a huge chunk of stability.
I guess because it's all unintegrated. Oh, time of troubles. A huge mistake, more like showing the disaster to the class.
Age of Reformation or after, Muscovy or Russia can trigger the times of trouble disaster if they fall below 25 stability or 60
mistake.
Legitimacy.
Showing the class.
And I just did that. I ramped up my stability investment to max.
Here, let's see if the modifier is still that big. Minus 25% state satisfaction equilibrium. I think it's smaller than we've seen before. The food production is also painful now that food matters. And so this is going to be extremely expensive and painful. And I think that's the entire idea, is highlighting this specifically. This and the Little Ice Age are just extraordinarily painful for Russia if you pop them. I don't know when... is Age of Reformation or later. So this is going to be really hard to avoid for the entire rest of the game. And you probably just want to set up a situation where it's going to be the least painful as possible and then pop it and try and get through it, would be my guess.
Or 60 legitimacy. And I just did that. I ramped up my stability investment to max and prayed, but alas...
Let's take a look at his sliders. Let's see Paul Allen's sliders.
And I just did that. I ramped up my stability investment to...
So he is also paying, it looks like 6.1 in terms of food income. And that's maybe one to keep an eye on as things develop, right? Because he's generating less food. But the building maintenance cost is in the version he is playing on. And it looks like we have income of 540. Yeah, look at that. How much of that is going to buildings? Like a third of our income. That's quite expensive. He's a 0 on the sliders for army maintenance. Fort maintenance across the core is maxed out, but if you're at 100, you don't have to pay the full amount. Cultural investment, he's investing quite a bit into culture. This is decreasing antagonism, so there's something there. The Diplo spending is almost certainly at a level to support his subjects or something like this, and has to do with Diplo capacity reasons. And then we're maxing out, or we're equilibriuming tax, even on the clergy. yeah, we're getting enough on the clergy that this makes a lot of sense to be doing. I think often if the clergy is not very powerful or there's not a lot of clergy members, you don't get that much and you just minimize it to maximize research speed, not taxing the tribes at all because they don't really generate much income and their bonus is kind of free. And so we do have kind of that going on. The diplomacy, we're getting 12 income from our subjects here, which is nice. This income is worth a lot more than other income because if we just kind of take that off and we make it 530 versus 474, and what's the relationship between that? Like maybe 85-90% of our income we're spending on expenses. So most of your expenses or all of the sliders expense scale with your income, and so or scale with your tax base plus your trade income, your total trade income. And so as you increase your tax, you also increase your expenses, but not with this diplo income, also not with minting. It does increase it with trade income, and so it is going to be more valuable, but spending quite a bit on forts as well. Maybe he has more forts than he needs, this type of thing. But okay, all of this makes a lot of sense anyways. But just kind of keen on seeing the buying food thing and just seeing if it gets way bigger, because minus 25% food production.
Max and prayed, but alas, the disaster fired.
Womp womp, there's another minus 50 stab. And that's going to be quite painful because positive stab's not especially valuable. Stab is just valuable in the abstract. It's not just a mana thing. Positive stab gives you additional pop promotion speed. It's not really, gives you a little bit of state satisfaction. Negative stab gives you a huge malice to a state satisfaction on top of what he's already getting from the disaster, minus 25%. And so remember, he was taxing at a rate where he would have 50% satisfaction. If he continues to do that, he's just going to be massively in the hole and just hemorrhaging money. So he'll either have to tax them over the satisfaction of 50 threshold, in which case he'll get a bunch of rebellions, or he's going to have to figure out some way to make his budget work. He's probably paying a really huge amount for armories or the manpower buildings in general, because he's been building quite a lot of them. So the thing the approach I would be inclined to have would be to shutter some of these manpower buildings, especially ones that aren't in areas with a lot of control.
East out Georgia and Circassia for as much as I could, embraced for impact. The effects of the disaster reduced food production and all estate loyalty severely.
So buildings,
the effects of the disaster reduced food production and all estate loyalty.
Unfortunately, we don't get to see how much he's paying for food now, which is kind of one thing that we particularly wanted to see. But you can see here, he has the things on equilibrium tax. Why are they taxing at an equilibrium of 44%? That's a little bit curious. They should be down at 50%, in which case he's getting paid a whole lot less. And look how he's hemorrhaging money. Now, a huge cost for him is those buildings. That's 180 that he's paying down there on the buildings. And so he's probably, like, the approach here is probably closing as many manpower buildings as possible. You don't have to delete them. You just close them. And then once the disaster's over, you can bring them back up. He is losing quite a bit of manpower. I assume this is reinforcement. I don't know if he's closed a bunch of these yet. But you're really getting pushed down on your income. And this is like kind of what we were getting at earlier when we talked about that peasant satisfaction, that 10%. That's so good. That allows him, or is allowing him, to kind of stay in the game with peasants' income without the peasants getting really unsatisfied, right? Or unsatisfied. That is an example of how this is really powerful as a modifier, and how, like, some of these things stitch together. We're also paying him army maintenance right now, so when the war's over, we're going to be at minus 60, so we'll only be getting minus 90 in terms of income, and so we need to figure out, the simplest thing is closing down a lot of our buildings. If we can afford it, decreasing our diplo spending. The culture investment's not tremendously expensive, but you could decrease that as well. It's not necessarily as important. Your prestige will just drop. That's fine. In terms of approaching how to do this, another way to approach this is just to say, I'm going to deal with the revs, and you just max out the tax on some of these guys, and you just deal with the fact that they're going to rev repeatedly as you go through the disaster.
Severely destroying my economy. Maybe that comet was a sign after all. To get out of this disaster, we need
Man's
to
got jokes.
It for 15 years or have my stability over 44. So I kept my stability.
So in particular, cabinet action is also going to be important.
At max investment despite the cost.
And he's picking options that give the stab here. For example, like this. Call an ambulance and call it for him here.
Multiple loans in the process.
I think this is Habibi.
We faced rebellions.
Yeah, so this is the thing when the satisfactions low, you're going to start spinning up a bunch of these, and so you have to either deal with the revs or not tax the pops and like hemorrhage the money. And so this is how you're getting squeezed, much like the guy is getting squeezed in the back of that police car for causing the time of troubles here in Russia, as one does, and as it happens.
Our oldest son was assassinated and experienced famine. We used the Orthodox Synod to gain more stability.
Well, how much stab are we getting here? 7. That seems pretty good.
Faster than I expected, our tenacity shined through. Only take.
I'm surprised he didn't show the cabinet action. I feel confident he's using the cabinet action to increase stab, but maybe this just didn't make the cut in terms of the video. But okay, are we out of the disaster now and we're making money? It looks like the satisfaction looks way better. So this does look like we're in good shape then.
Taking 9k debt in the process.
Ugh. I didn't notice the debt. The debt's really bad because it gives you crown power and malice. I think it's like 2.5% per loan. So he's getting like minus close to 30% crown power. Oh, he scrolled down. Do we get to see how much
tenacity shined through? Only taking 9k debt in the process.
It was 18 ducats on food, but he didn't show it during the disaster. I was curious of seeing it during the disaster, how much he was paying for food. Not so much. Okay, so we are 10 years from the goal, and we are at 10 million pops. So
after annexing more subjects, we reached 10 million pops.
So really, it's largely through expansion here. So he has an absolute enormous amount of land to have that 10 million pops, whereas like one of these, I mean, you can get it with Russia, but it's going to be way easier on other countries. But this is still a pretty solid performance, and a lot of this is off the back of gaining these additional locations and benefiting from the fact that you're going to get additional population growth with these locations. And so effectively, greater location density is actually really valuable for population growth, which is kind of an interesting case for Germany, because I think this is the most, like, per area inch on the map, this is the most location dense area in the game, which incidentally is probably why scrolling over it as you get later into the game could cause like performance issues. And so you can really kind of spin up quite a bit of pops inside this density. But we see like a France with just a little bit of the lowlands, like in the early 1500s, we've like had like 10 million pops compared to like this enormous expansion required to hit 10 million pops on Russia. And I'm not talking about like the performance in the video. I'm talking about just Russia in the abstract. Population is a bit of a problem. Really cool to see them hit 10 million though. I was like, that number seemed really big to me at the start of the video, and obviously he's accomplished it, taking quite a bit of stuff. Is that, okay, for a second I thought this got like decolonized. Actually, maybe it did. If your pops fall too low, you can actually decolonize an area and it becomes unowned again.
1590. And despite being a massive nation with 10 million pops, we still aren't even in the top 10 great powers.
Womp womp. We do have 174 income here. I do think there are more sources of proximity costs, but I don't know if they're all available before 1600. So eventually Russia gets some really strong stuff going on, but it is like very slow at the start.
Video ends here, but the story does not. This was our Muscovy after. Okay,
so pretty nice little spin up at the end, getting through the disaster.
On the official Europa Universalis.
Okay, so looking at the control, I mean, I definitely think you could see this is cute. He just annexed someone right here, so they still have really high control. It's still decaying down. But in terms of like the control map mode, I feel like it's possible to get a little bit more stuff done here than this as Russia at this point in the game. But also, this is following nerfs as well, relative to previous versions, for those of you who are like looking at this, where the amount of proximity, or the amount of control proximity gives, instead of giving 1-to-1, where 100 proximity gives 100 control, it now gives 75%. So 100 control only gives 90 proximity. 100 control only, 100 proximity only gives 75 control. And so it's only 75% effective. And you can see here, a lot of roads are getting constructed right now. And I think that roads are just like so valuable, and that probably would have been a thing to prioritize more. I would say, just generally speaking, like however valuable you think roads are, they're just better than that. But yeah, this is a bit of an interesting one. You do have the 10 million pops though, which was the goal.
Comment below which nation you're excited to play when EU5 comes out on November 4th.
Woo!
Thank you so much for watching.
Where we're going to show some more map photos, mostly Orthodox. So speaking of, in terms of us going admin ideas in the third age for the extra conversion speed, is that necessary? It looks like we're mostly Orthodox here anyways, so it looks like that would have been fine. Nice literacy. Probably spin through these faster, but... Okay, so that for us is going to be the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown / commentary. If you like these types of videos, please comment and let me know, because just kind of curiosity and knowing what we should cover, what we should do. I definitely wanted to cover this. It's cool seeing the AARs. And so, yeah, I hope you enjoyed. If you were going to pre-order the game and you wanted to help out the channel, you can order from the official website with our code GENERALIST in all caps. It won't give you a discount, but it will give us 12% of the sale. But anyways, we already said we hope you enjoyed. So with that said, I hope you all have a good one. Bye-bye now.